Welcome to a new episode of Essentials. In Essentials, we look at the current unrest in the world and try to understand what is going on. We all know that it is complex stuff and an ambitious endeavor, but as long as we slowly peel the onion layer for layer, we can come to the heart of the matter. So join me in this exploration journey. In the previous episode, we looked at the populists and their tools, and we saw that they have quite some instruments at their disposal. Attacking the mainstream media, the we versus them narrative, the simple solutions, the anti-elite stance, the undermining of democratic institutions, to name only a few of their tools. We know that populists such as Trump, Le Pen, Modi and Wilders will make use of these tools to the fullest. This is to be expected, so maybe them using these tools is not the most interesting part of the story. We should not bother too much about that for now. It distracts from what is really at stake. Why is 20 to 30% of the population so angry and frustrated? Why do people follow populists, while these guys just seem to destroy our democratic societies? And what is the endgame for the populists? Instead of focusing on the populists, we have to focus on something else. We will look at the roots of the discontent. What is fueling this unrest and anger? Why are so many people frustrated, and do they want radical change? Before we start, it is important that we do not judge arrogantly from the couch in our own bubble. Do not consider these angry people as low life or just plain stupid, because they are not. Maybe they have good reasons to be so emotional and angry. Let's have a look. The unrest and discontent cannot be explained by only one phenomenon. It is a complex topic, and we will have to peel the onion layer for layer. In this episode, we will look at economic globalization, because that is often mentioned as a driver for the current discontent. So what exactly is economic globalization? There are many definitions, and we can make it as complex as we want. However, we will stick to a simple definition. Globalization is the process by which businesses, goods, services and financial markets become integrated and operate on a global scale, leading to greater economic interdependence among countries. Globalization is everywhere, and we pick the fruits from it every day, the whole day. Think about the Colombian coffee you sip in the morning, the French croissant you eat, and the international news you watch on your iPhone while you put on your Thai shirt, Turkish pants, and Italian shoes. And this is only the first 15 minutes of your day. Imagine the globalization you encounter during the rest of the day. We saw in an earlier episode of Essentials that China, India and Eastern Europe joined the capitalist world in the 1980s and 1990s. The opening up of these economies had a huge effect as hundreds of millions of cheap laborers entered the world's labor market. Consequently, for companies, it became very attractive to move their factories to these cheap labor countries. Technical innovations such as computers, telecommunications, internet, but also containerization, made it technically possible for companies to set up production facilities in these countries, far away from head office. It has enabled instant communication across the globe, facilitating trade, outsourcing, and the coordination of global supply chains. Consequently, businesses can now connect with suppliers, customers, and partners worldwide, transcending geographical boundaries. Thirdly, there are political drivers that played a significant role in promoting economic globalization, shaping policies that facilitate cross-border trade, investment, and cooperation among nations. Take, for instance, trade liberalization. Governments worldwide have pursued trade liberalization policies aimed at reducing barriers to international trade, such as tariffs, quotas, and trade restrictions. So the world economy was ready for globalization, both politically and technically. It was soon obvious who became the winners of the globalization? I think there are three winners. Of course, there are the countries that got a growing share in the world economy, such as China and India. Hundreds of millions of people got out of poverty in these countries. A clear winner, I would say. Then, there are the consumers in the Western countries. They got much more choice of products and services, and often against very low prices. We all know the cheap products that come out of China. Another winner identified. And then there are, of course, the corporates. They found production locations with a lot of cheap labor. They were able to move their factories to Southeast Asia and set up efficient supply chains. Shareholders, owners, and senior management clearly benefited from this. However, it is not only sunshine in globalization land. There are also some clear losers, or maybe it is better to say victims. Of course, there are the countries in the West which have lost, because many corporates left these countries to set up offices and factories in China and Southeast Asia. Economic globalization can potentially undermine national sovereignty. As multinational corporations wield increasing influence over global markets, they may exert pressure on governments to deregulate industries, lower labor standards, and weaken environmental protections in the name of competitiveness. This erosion of state sovereignty can diminish the ability of governments to address social welfare concerns and protect the interests of their citizens. In addition, economic globalization has been criticized for its negative impact on the environment. The pursuit of profit often comes at the expense of ecological sustainability, as companies prioritize short-term financial gains over long-term environmental conservation. Transporting goods with airplanes and container ships and trucks from A to B and then to C and then back to A isn't obviously good for the carbon footprint. However, the most obvious victims for this story are the blue-collar, low-skilled laborers in the Western countries who lost their jobs to their Asian competitors. Millions of laborers in factories in the West saw their jobs move to China and India, and they couldn't do anything about it. It not only led to job losses, but also to lower incomes for these low-skilled employees as shipyards, car factories, and many other industries just disappeared in the West. These people had to go for low-wage jobs in the service sector, such as night guard, cab driver, waiter, supermarket workers, and the likes. In most cases, they need more than one job to make ends meet. And it became more painful as the highly educated employees in the service sector benefited from the economic globalization. These professionals, such as investment bankers, corporate lawyers, marketing and advertising professionals, management consultants, software developers, supply chain and logistics managers, benefited massively. There is one graph that says it all. It shows the worldwide income growth in the period 1988-2008, when a lot of the economic globalization took place. The graph gives an overview from the poorest 5% until the richest 5% of the world population. The graph, the so-called elephant graph, because it has the form of an elephant, from economist Branko Milanovic, shows clearly how the incomes in emerging economies, such as China and India, have risen about 70 to 80% in that period, while the middle class in the Western countries had a standstill in that same period. The global elite also benefited significantly in that period, while the poorest people on the planet were locked out of growth. The graph clearly shows the transfer from wealth that took place from the middle class of the developed world to the populations in mainly India, China, and Southeast Asia. So let's go back to our initial question. Why are certain people in the West so angry and frustrated? I think part of the answer lays here. The low-skilled factory laborers in the developed countries have only experienced no real income growth while the elite boomed. The elite did not care because there has been no sharing of the income growth with the middle incomes. No one took care of these victims of the economic globalization. The elite only took care of themselves. It is clear that something needs to be done to mitigate the anger of people that comes from the income inequality and job losses, which are the result of economic globalization. A more fair sharing of the benefits would be a start. Maybe we should redistribute some of the fruits from globalization to its victims, maybe tax measures and serious training and education efforts. Or maybe we should terminate economic globalization and turn it all back. In another episode of Essentials, we will discuss potential solutions to these topics. But there is much more. Economic globalization is only one part of the story. In the next episode of Essentials, we will have a look at another part of the story as we look at the rise of rentier capitalism. Rentier capital economy has strengthened the income effects of economic globalization. It will all be explained in the next episode. So please join me in the next installment of Essentials, where we will peel the onion further. The topic will be rentier capitalism and its consequences. And if you like the series, please do subscribe to the channel